In a small town, as November approached and the weather turned colder, fog enveloped the area. Outside the town, there was a cave that had supposedly existed for centuries. According to legend, many people had disappeared in this cave, and some were found driven mad. However, these legends were often dismissed as a mix of local folklore and exaggerated tales. Ilul and her friends decided to explore the cave. Located about 10 kilometers from the town, the cave was rarely visited and looked quite decrepit. Equipped with hiking boots, headlamps, and warm clothing, they considered the cave exploration a kind of adventure, unaware of the dark secrets waiting within. The entrance was as usual, wide and deep, but after a few meters, the tunnel began to narrow. As Ilul and her friends ventured deeper, the air grew colder. The light from their headlamps cast eerie shadows on the rocky walls, making the depths even more unsettling. After a while, one of the group, Ahmet, noticed an unusual silence. The conversations of the others had suddenly stopped. Ahmet alerted Ilul to pay attention to the surroundings. The growing silence became increasingly disturbing. The group decided to turn back and avoid going further into the cave. However, finding the way back proved unexpectedly complicated. Several times, they felt completely lost. The sounds in the cave seemed like they were made by some other entity, whispering voices, rustling noises. As night fell, Ilul and her friends grew increasingly anxious. Their attempts to find the exit were thwarted by the darkness and confusing narrow passages. At one point, Ilul discovered an old graffiti. On the wall was a screaming face and the words "I couldn't escape." Her eyes widened with fear. Her friends tried to dismiss it as a prank, but it only intensified Ilul's terror. Eventually, they realized it was impossible to exit the cave. They crawled through the tunnels in a desperate attempt to find an escape route. After a while, someone found an old note buried in deep silence. It read "End of the path" with an arrow pointing in a certain direction. The arrow led them to an exit, but they couldn't quite determine how long they had been lost in the cave. When they finally emerged, the sun was setting and the air was chillingly cold. Upon returning to the town, no one had the courage to recount their terrifying experience in the cave. They made a pact to never speak of it to anyone. The townspeople knew that the cave should never be visited again. Perhaps the dark secrets within would never be fully understood. Ilul and her friends never approached the cave again. Each of them knew that the moments they had spent in the cave had tested the limits of time and reality. The fear they experienced there was more real than the town's legends. Giri's Kizmini Degister. ChatGPT. Tabii, ist Giri's Kizmanin Degismus Halli. The Dark Cave. In a small town nestled in a valley, the onset of November brought with it an eerie chill. The once vibrant autumn leaves were now buried under a thick layer of frost, and a dense fog rolled over the landscape, obscuring the edges of reality. On the outskirts of town, partially hidden by overgrown vegetation, was an old cave, its entrance partially obscured and nearly forgotten. The cave had always been a topic of local superstition. Stories of people vanishing without a trace and others emerging in a state of madness had woven themselves into the town's folklore. Most dismissed these stories as mere tales to scare children or discourage foolish adventurers. However, for some, the cave held an allure of mystery and danger that couldn't be easily ignored. Ilul, along with her friends, was drawn to this allure. They saw the cave as an opportunity for a thrilling adventure, a chance to prove their bravery and perhaps even to uncover some hidden truth about the old legends. They equipped themselves with hiking boots, headlamps, and warm clothing, believing that a bit of preparation and courage would suffice to explore the unknown. The cave entrance, though imposing, seemed manageable. But as they ventured deeper, they discovered that the cave was far more treacherous than anticipated. The passage narrowed and the air grew colder, setting the stage for an experience that none of them had expected.